Watch this carefully, especially if you live in Kenya or in a country that loves Christmas and New Year celebrations so much. In Kenya, Christmas is a big celebration. Everyone is excited. People prepare delicious meals, exchange gifts, and visit family and friends. The streets are lively with music, laughter, and sometimes fireworks. It's a season of love and sharing. Miriam was in her kitchen early that morning, cooking polo and chicken stew. The stew was rich, with a deep, mouth-watering aroma. There were large chunks of tender chicken in it. The smell spread throughout the house, making it feel festive. Miriam smiled as she stirred the pot, satisfied with her work. It was Christmas Day, and Miriam wanted to share some food with her neighbor, Mama Aking. "Danny!" Miriam called his son, who was arranging decorations in the living room. "Yes, Mama," Danny replied, rushing over. Miriam carefully packed the food into a container, making sure to add extra chicken and stew. She wanted Mama Aking to feel loved and appreciated. Then, she covered the bowl and placed it in a plastic bag. "Take this food to Mama Aking," Miriam said, handing the bag to Danny. "Tell her I said Merry Christmas." Danny's face lit up with a big smile. He was excited. In Kenya, when a mother sends her child to deliver food on Christmas, it's always a cheerful task. Danny knew he wouldn't come back empty-handed. Mama Aking would surely give her something, maybe sweets, a small gift, or even some money. This thought made Danny eager to go. "Yes, Mama. I'll take it now," Danny said. He grabbed the bag and dashed outside. "Be careful, don't spill it," Miriam called after him, but Danny was already gone. The sun was shining brightly, and the streets were alive with activity. Children were playing with new toys, some running around with sparklers. Adults dressed in vibrant clothes were chatting and laughing. The scent of roasted meat and spices filled the air, making it feel even more like Christmas. Danny walked confidently through the neighborhood, holding the bag of food tightly. "Danny, where are you going?" one of her friends called out. "I'm taking food to Mama Aking," he shouted back proudly. Danny shouted back, smiling. Her friends cheered for him. They understood how exciting it was to deliver food on Christmas. Danny waved at them and continued walking, his heart filled with happiness. He was thrilled as she reached Mama Aking's house. Standing at the door, he adjusted his dress and checked to make sure the food was still intact. Then, with a big smile, he knocked on the door. The door opened, and there stood Mama Aking, her face lighting up. "Ah, Danny, you're here," she said warmly. "Merry Christmas, Mama Aking," Danny said with a cheerful smile, handing over the bag of food carefully, as though it was something precious. "Wow! Your mother sent this to me?" Mama Aking asked, peeking into the bag. "Thank you so much. Make sure to thank her for me when you get back." "Yes, Mama," Danny replied quickly, still smiling. He stood there patiently, his heart racing in anticipation. Then Mama Aking said the words Danny had been hoping to hear, "Wait, I have something for you." As soon as Danny heard those words, his eyes sparkled with excitement. His heart leaped with joy, though he tried her best to remain calm on the outside. Mama Aking stepped inside for a moment. When she returned, she was holding something in her hand. It was a shiny 50-shilling coin. She looked at Danny with a funny smile and said, "Come here." Danny stepped forward quickly, but Mama Aking didn't hand him the coin right away. Instead, he held the shiny coin and made a small circle around Danny's head 3 times. Danny didn't mind. He kept smiling, not caring what Mama Aking did, as long as she got the coin in the end. Finally, Mama Aking handed it to him. "Here you go, my boy." Use it to buy something you like, he said with a hearty laugh. Thank you, Mama, Danny said happily, holding the coin tightly in his hand. To others, 50 shillings might not mean much, but to Danny, it was like a treasure. He was already imagining what she could buy, maybe some sweets, biscuits, or even a small toy. Danny waved goodbye to Mama Aking and began walking back home, his heart bursting with joy. He felt incredibly lucky. His steps were light, and he smiled all the way. The streets were still buzzing with activity. Children played with their new toys while fireworks cracked in the distance, lighting up the sky. As he got closer to his house, Danny's excitement grew. He started running, the cool breeze brushing against his cheeks as he laughed out loud. He skipped down the road, clutching the coin tightly, eager to tell her mother about the gift. But as he left, something dark lingered behind her. At the doorway, Mama Aking watched Danny disappear into the distance. His kind smile had vanished, replaced with a cold, bitter look. That boy and her mother, she muttered under her breath, such a bother. That money your mother forced me to pay back, she'll only spend it on sickness, Mama Aking muttered bitterly. She shook her head, hissed, and slammed the door shut. To Miriam, Mama Aking was a close friend. They shared meals, had long chats, and supported each other during tough times. Miriam trusted her. But Miriam didn't know the truth. She didn't know that her friend had been secretly harboring resentment toward her. That bitterness had been simmering for a long time, waiting for the right moment to surface. Years ago, Miriam had helped Mama Aking by lending her 2,000 shillings. Mama Aking had promised to repay it quickly, but when the time came, she didn't. At first, Miriam waited patiently. She believed in helping friends and didn't want to pressure her. Maybe she's struggling right now, Miriam thought. But weeks turned into months, and still, Mama Aking didn't return the money. Miriam began to worry. She needed the money to take care of her own family. Eventually, she started reminding her friend, but she did so gently. Sister Aking, please don't forget the money I lent you. I'll need it back soon, Miriam would say. But every time, Mama Aking had an excuse. "Ah, my sister, things are tight right now. Please bear with me." Or, "I just had an urgent bill to pay. I'll sort you out soon." "I will pay you next week," Mama Aking had said, and Miriam believed her. Miriam was patient, trusting her friend and not wanting to create conflict. She even extended the repayment time, hoping for the best. But the money still didn't come. Months passed, and Miriam couldn't stay silent anymore. One day, Miriam spoke up firmly. "Sister Aking, this is not fair. I helped you when you needed it, but now you refuse to pay me back. I've been patient, but this is too much." That small confrontation changed everything. Mama Aking eventually returned the 2,000 shillings, but she wasn't happy about it. As she handed the money over, her heart burned with anger. She dares to demand money from me? After all I've done for her, Mama Aking thought bitterly. Miriam believed the issue was resolved. She thought they had made peace and tried her best to mend their friendship. She smiled, shared meals, and continued helping Mama Aking, thinking everything was fine. But Mama Aking was not fine. Inside, she held on to her anger, feeling insulted by the argument. She couldn't forgive Miriam. "I'll never forget what she did to me," Mama Aking thought. "I'll wait for the right time to teach her a lesson." Now, on Christmas Day, Miriam sent Danny to deliver food to Mama Aking. Miriam thought her gesture would bring joy and strengthen their friendship. Mama Aking accepted the food with a smile, but inside, her bitterness remained. She acts like she's better than me, Mama aching muttered after Danny left. He brought food to my house, but I'll make sure he regrets it. I'll teach her a lesson he'll never forget. He doesn't know what's coming, Mama aching thought as she sat in her house, her mind full of dark thoughts. Miriam, meanwhile, was at home, happy and waiting for Danny to return. She had no idea that her neighbor had planted an evil seed on his son. She didn't know that the peace she believed they had was just a facade. Danny came home smiling, his face full of joy. In his hand, he held the shiny 50-shilling coin that Mama aching had given her. As soon as he entered the house, he ran to her mother. "Mama, see," Danny said proudly, showing the coin. Miriam looked at his son and smiled warmly. She was glad Danny had delivered the food safely and even returned with a small gift. To Miriam, this was perfectly normal. Mama aching was her good friend, so she had no reason to worry. "Good boy," Miriam said with a nod. "You can use it however you like." Hearing this, Danny's joy grew even more. He felt like the happiest boy in the world. After showing her mother the coin, Danny sat down to eat a big plate of pulao and chicken stew. He enjoyed every bite, feeling satisfied and excited about the rest of the day. Later that afternoon, Danny decided to use the money to buy sweets. He went to the small kiosk near their house and picked her favorite ones, stuffing them into his pocket. He planned to enjoy the sweets later when he went out to play with her friends. Christmas Day was always a time for children to visit loved ones, play games, and celebrate together. Danny could hardly wait. When his friends arrived, he quickly changed into her new Christmas dress. He loved her outfit and felt proud wearing it, ready to enjoy the festive day with his friends. Before leaving, Danny unwrapped one of the sweets and popped it into her mouth. As he started to chew, something felt wrong. "Mama, my stomach is hurting," Danny said, clutching his belly. "Put that sweet down," Miriam replied. "You've been eating too many sweets, and that's why your stomach hurts. Just rest for a while." But the pain didn't stop. "Mama, I have a headache," Danny said weakly. Miriam frowned, thinking Danny was overreacting. "Danny, stop this. If you don't feel like going out with your friends, just rest. You'll feel better soon." But Danny leaned against the wall, holding his head. "Mama, my eyes are hurting," he whispered. Miriam turned to look at his son, and her heart sank. Danny's eyes were blood red, and he looked as if he was losing strength. "Joshua, come quickly!" Miriam shouted, calling her husband, who was in the living room fixing something. Joshua rushed into the room at the sound of Miriam's panicked voice. When he saw Danny, his face turned pale. Danny's body was trembling uncontrollably. His arms and legs jerked violently, and his eyes rolled back in his head. "Danny!" Miriam screamed, grabbing his son. But Danny didn't respond, his body kept convulsing. Joshua grabbed his car keys without hesitation. "We're taking him to the hospital now," he shouted. They carried Danny to the car, with Miriam holding him tightly in her arms. Tears streamed down Miriam's face as she whispered prayers, begging his son to hold on. Joshua drove as fast as he could, the car bouncing over the uneven road. Danny's body continued to convulse, and his breathing was shallow. The joyful Christmas day had turned into a nightmare. Miriam's heart raced with fear. She didn't know what was happening to his son, nor did she suspect that something far darker was behind Danny's sudden illness. When they reached the hospital, the doctors immediately began working on Danny. They gave him medication, checked his heartbeat, and put him on oxygen. But nothing seemed to help. Instead of improving, Danny's condition worsened. His body kept shaking, and his breathing grew slower. After some time, a doctor came out to speak with Joshua and Miriam. His expression was grim, and his voice was low. "I've never seen a case like this before," he said. "It doesn't look like an ordinary illness. I think you should pray." Miriam was stunned. She stared at the doctor and replied, "Pray? My son needs urgent medical attention." Desperate, she and Joshua decided to take Danny to another hospital, hoping for better answers. They carried him back to the car and sped off, praying that time was on their side. At the new hospital, the doctors took Danny in immediately. Miriam stayed outside, pacing, tears streaming down her face. As she waited, she realized they were running low on money. Determined to get what they needed, she decided to rush home to collect the little savings they had left. Miriam hurried back to their house, quickly searching for the money she had hidden. Just as she was about to leave, there was a knock on the door. When Miriam opened it, she was surprised to see Mama Aking standing there, smiling as if everything was fine. "Hello, my friend," Mama Aking said cheerfully. "This one you're rushing like this, is something wrong?" Miriam stared at her, confused and taken aback. Something about Mama Aking's calm demeanor sent a chill down her spine. "Good afternoon, Mama Aking," Miriam said hurriedly. "My son Danny is very sick. He's in the hospital now, and I was just about to head back." Mama Aking gasped, placing a hand over her chest. "Oh no! I'm so sorry to hear that," she said, feigning concern. "What happened?" "He's in very bad condition," Miriam replied, her voice breaking. "We're trying everything we can to save him, but it's serious." Mama Aking sighed dramatically. "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry. Please, take this basket of fruits for him," she said, handing Miriam a basket filled with oranges, bananas, and apples. "He'll need this to regain her strength." Miriam took the basket with shaky hands. "Thank you so much, Mama Aking. God bless you." "Don't worry," Mama Aking replied with a fake smile. "He'll be fine. Just take care." Miriam quickly thanked her again and rushed back to the hospital, not noticing the eerie glint in Mama Aking's eyes as she shut the door behind her. When Miriam arrived at the hospital, she found Joshua standing by Danny's bed. His face was pale, his expression deeply worried. "What happened?" Miriam asked anxiously as she approached. Joshua turned to her, his voice trembling. He started shouting, "Help! Help! Please don't take me! Don't end my life!" Miriam's heart sank. She rushed to Danny's side and held his hand. Danny was still shaking, her eyes tightly shut as if he was trapped in a terrible nightmare. What they didn't know was that Danny was indeed trapped in a horrifying dream. In it, he was tied up, surrounded by dark, shadowy figures with glowing red eyes. These evil spirits had been sent by Mama Aking to torment him, their whispers echoing in Danny's ears. Danny struggled in vain, crying out for help, but the spirits only tightened their grip. Joshua looked at Miriam, his voice filled with desperation. This isn't normal. This is something else. We need to do something." Miriam nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We need to pray," she said firmly. "That's the only way to save him." So, Miriam and Joshua began praying for their son Danny. They prayed day and night, fasting and asking God to intervene and protect Danny from the dark forces tormenting him. For 3 days, they did not eat or drink, only praying fervently for their son's safety. On the 3rd day, while they were deep in prayer, Danny's condition worsened. He screamed in agony, "Mama! Papa! Please help me!" Miriam cried out, "Hold on, my son. You will be free. Then, as they prayed with all their hearts, something strange happened. Danny's body shook violently, and a dark presence seemed to leave him. In an invisible moment, an evil spirit was expelled from him, though no one could see it. At that same moment, the basket of fruits that Mama Aking had given them began to tremble. Suddenly, the fruits started to turn into bats. The bats flew out of the basket and swarmed around the room. Miriam screamed and held Danny tighter, while Joshua quickly grabbed a broom and tried to chase the bats away. But the bats were too many. They flew out of the window and disappeared into the night sky. The room fell silent. Miriam and Joshua stood frozen, too shocked to move. They both knew something dark had been unleashed in that room. Mama Aking gave us those fruits, Miriam whispered, her voice trembling. I think she did this to Danny. Joshua nodded, his face now a mixture of fear and anger. This is evil. We need to protect our son, no matter what. We need to stop it. They continued praying, holding on to Danny as they called on God to free her completely. Danny was still and quiet on the bed, his breathing now even, his eyes no longer bloodshot. After 3 days of prayer and fasting, Danny was completely healed. The shaking stopped, his breathing returned to normal, and the fear left his eyes. The doctors were amazed at the sudden change in his health and said he could go home. Miriam and Joshua were overjoyed. As they left the hospital with Danny in their arms, Miriam said, "We should have listened to the doctor and prayed sooner. But God saved our son." "Yes," Miriam said, holding Danny's hand. "We thank God for his help." They drove home, feeling grateful and relieved. Miriam kept looking at Danny in the back seat, her heart full of thankfulness that his son was alive and safe. When they arrived home, something strange caught their attention. As they stepped out of the car, they heard loud shouting from the street. Miriam and Joshua exchanged confused looks. "What is that noise?" Miriam asked. They walked toward the sound, eager to understand what was happening. A crowd had gathered, pointing at someone. When Miriam and Joshua saw who it was, they froze. It was Mama Aking. Mama Aking was stumbling down the street, looking very strange. Her hair was messy, her clothes were torn, and she was shouting wildly, laughing to herself in an eerie way. "She's gone mad," someone in the crowd said. Miriam couldn't believe her eyes. "What happened to her?" she whispered. Joshua shook his head. "This is not a mistake," he said softly. "The evil she sent to Danny has come back to her." Miriam felt a mix of shock and sadness. Mama Aking had once been her close friend, someone she had trusted. But now, she saw the truth. Joshua had tried to harm her family, and God had delivered justice. "God fought for us," Miriam said quietly. "Yes," Joshua replied. "Let us take care of Danny and leave the rest to God." Miriam nodded, her heart calm but still heavy. Holding Danny close, they walked back into their home, knowing that God's protection had been with them. They were thankful that God had saved their son and protected their family from Mama Aking. Evil. This story isn't meant to take away from the joy of Christmas with your loved ones, but to remind you to be careful. Also, remember to stay prayerful. Every action has its consequences. Always pray before you eat, especially during this Christmas season. Jealousy and bitterness are some of the devil's favorite tools to ruin happy moments. Be vigilant and protect your peace, and trust that God will guide you through any challenges.